The Galactic Council gathered, a towering collection of alien elites who ruled the galaxy with an iron grip. Each of their species, having evolved under different stars, carried their own sense of superiority. To them, Earth was no more than a new addition to their collection of subjugated worlds. Their fleet commanders, strategists, and diplomats viewed humanity's achievements with mild amusement. Earth's technological growth had been noted, but the Council had crushed far more advanced civilizations before. To them, this was just another routine imposition of their will. Their decision was swift. They would demand tribute, a staggering amount of resources and military surrender. The logic was simple. If humanity's recent progress made them a threat, then stripping them of their autonomy would ensure the Council's continued dominance. Any sign of resistance would be met with overwhelming force, as it always had been. The Council's victories over countless species had instilled in them a deep-rooted arrogance, one that led them to believe this ultimatum was merely a formality. Earth, like all the others, would bow. The message was sent across the galaxy. Humanity was to offer their resources or face the consequences. The ultimatum was clear, the consequences dire. Surrender their fleets, their technological advances, and their future, or face annihilation. To the Galactic Council, it was a win-win situation. Either humanity submitted without a fight, or they would get to display their power once again, crushing a species that had dared to think it could stand on its own. But the Council's hubris was profound. They hadn't seen the quiet determination simmering beneath Earth's surface. They had no understanding of what it meant to face humanity at its core, a species that had not only survived countless trials but had thrived in adversity. Earth's history was one of rebellion, of pushing back against overwhelming odds. The Council saw none of this. They simply saw a species they believed was unprepared for war. When the ultimatum reached the Terran Empire, the leadership was not caught off guard. Humanity had been expecting this moment. For years, they had studied the Council's movements, noting how every species that showed any potential to disrupt the status quo was met with demands, and ultimately, violence. The Terran military command had been preparing for this, not out of fear, but out of necessity. Earth's leaders knew that submission would mean not only the loss of autonomy, but the slow suffocation of everything humanity had built. They could not bow. In the war rooms of Earth, there was no panic, no sign of distress. Instead, there was a calm, calculated silence. The Terran Empire's top strategists gathered, reviewing the Galactic Council's threats and calmly discussing the potential repercussions. To outside eyes, the Empire's response might have appeared passive, almost indifferent. But beneath the surface, humanity's vast military-industrial complex was already in motion. Plans, which had been long prepared, were quietly activated. Orders were given, and across Earth's colonies, fleets began to assemble. The Terran Emperor, a figure of gravitas and steel resolve, had already anticipated the next step. When the time came to address the people of Earth, he did so with a calm that sent shivers down the spine of those watching. In his address, the Emperor did not sugarcoat the situation. He spoke plainly, acknowledging the enormity of the threat, but with an underlying confidence that radiated strength. "Our enemies demand our surrender." The Emperor's voice carried through every colony, every outpost, and every fleet. "They believe we will kneel, that we will cower in fear of their armadas, their weapons. But they do not understand humanity. We are not a species that bows to fear. Our history is written in defiance. We have stood against forces that sought to destroy us, and we will stand again. Our future is not theirs to claim." The Emperor paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "We will not offer tribute. We will not give away what we have fought for. If the Galactic Council believes they can take what is ours, then let them come. Let them see what humanity is capable of." The speech, short and to the point, ignited a fire across the Terran Empire. This was not the speech of a desperate leader, nor was it the words of someone looking to provoke. It was the measured response of a civilization that had faced its demons, time and again, and had come out stronger each time. The Emperor did not need to rally the masses with grandstanding rhetoric. He knew his people understood what was at stake. Humanity had no intention of backing down. As the Emperor's message spread through the Terran military, every soldier, every commander, knew that war was inevitable. They had expected it, trained for it, and prepared for it. Across the Terran Empire, ships that had remained in the shadows of Earth's industrial complexes now emerged. Stealth fighters, capital ships, and weapons systems that the Council had never even conceived of were ready to be deployed. But the Terran Empire did not flaunt its power. The preparations continued in secret, and the world remained calm, even as Earth's elite squadrons prepared for war. The Galactic Council believed they had sent a warning, one that would cow a lesser species into submission. They expected compliance, or at worst, a desperate plea for negotiation. But humanity's response was neither. The Council had underestimated them in every way. The arrogance that had served them in the past would now lead to their undoing. As the Terran Empire solidified its defenses and rallied its fleets, the Galactic Council remained oblivious. They had assumed Earth would act like every other species they had subjugated. They had not accounted for the Terran Empire's resolve or its preparations for this very moment. In their arrogance, they had sent a message, but they had not understood the reply that was coming. Earth would not just respond, they would strike back harder than the Council could ever have imagined. As the Galactic Council paraded its dominance across the stars, basking in the security of their established reign, they were unaware of the quiet storm brewing in the Terran Empire. Humanity had watched for years, studied their methods, analyzed their strategies. While the Council rested in its arrogance, humanity had been preparing, not for a hopeful chance to negotiate, but for the inevitable moment when the galaxy's rulers would seek to subjugate them. In the shadow of Earth's cities and across its hidden shipyards, an armada had been forged. Not in haste, but with purpose, and with a singular focus, to face the day when the Council would overstep, when their perceived invulnerability would blind them to the threat humanity posed. This armada was more than a collection of ships. It was a testament to Earth's relentless drive for innovation, built with technologies that rivaled and, in many cases, surpassed anything the Council had ever encountered. The preparations were executed in silence. The Terran Empire understood that their true advantage lay in secrecy. For years, the Galactic Council had been led to believe that humanity was playing by the same rules as every other species under their dominion. But while the Council flaunted their might, humanity had perfected its weapons in the shadows. The fleet that now lay in wait was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, sleek, powerful, and equipped with advanced cloaking technologies that rendered it invisible to even the most sophisticated Council sensors. At the heart of this armada was the elite squadron of Terran veterans. These were not just soldiers, they were survivors, warriors hardened by decades of conflict on Earth and its colonies. They had fought in the worst conditions imaginable, and had emerged victorious time and again. Each one was handpicked, a master of both strategy and combat, and utterly lethal. These soldiers weren't merely trained, they were born for this moment, and their quiet precision was terrifying in its efficiency. The squadron had no need for bravado. They were calm, methodical, and when called upon, devastatingly effective. They had seen the chaos of war firsthand, and they had been prepared to do whatever was necessary to ensure the survival of their people. These were not the inexperienced or desperate fighters that the Council expected to face. These were humanity's finest, and their resolve was unshakable. But the elite squadron was only a part of the Terran Empire's preparations. At the core of their military strategy lay something far more fearsome: Earth's secret weapon. It was a weapon born from years of research, a culmination of human ingenuity pushed to its absolute limits. While the Council believed their control of planetary systems was absolute, the Terran scientists had developed a system capable of wiping entire worlds off the galactic map with a single strike. This weapon, hidden deep within Earth's military compounds, was the embodiment of humanity's quiet fury, a devastating force capable of planetary annihilation. The Council had dismissed Earth as a primitive threat. But they had no knowledge of this weapon, no understanding of the depths humanity had gone to in order to defend itself. This was not a tool of conquest, but of survival, a last resort engineered to remind the galaxy that humanity would not go quietly into the night. Should the Council push Earth too far, they would see this weapon in action, and they would know the true price of their arrogance. But destruction was not humanity's only weapon. The Terran Empire's leadership had devised a plan, one that played not only on their military strength but on the Council's greatest weakness, their overconfidence. The Council had grown complacent over centuries of unchecked dominance. Their fleets, once formidable, had become symbols of stagnation. They hadn't fought a real war in decades, relying instead on fear and intimidation to maintain their control. Earth knew this, and their strategy took full advantage of it. In secret, Terran strategists plotted a series of coordinated strikes designed to hit the Galactic Council at its core. They mapped out the locations of key military strongholds, the infrastructure that held the Council together. Each target was chosen with precision, not for maximum chaos, but for maximum impact. This was not a war of attrition. It would be swift, brutal, and decisive. Every strike would cripple the Council's ability to respond, leaving them scrambling in the face of a force they had completely underestimated. For humanity, this wasn't just about survival, it was about sending a message. A message to the Galactic Council, to the entire galaxy, that Earth would not be a pawn in their games. The strikes would be a reminder that while humanity may have been quiet, they were always watching, always preparing. And now, they were ready to act. As the final preparations were made, the fleet stood ready. The silence before the storm was palpable. Across the fleet, there was no sense of hesitation, no second-guessing. Every pilot, every commander, every soldier knew what was at stake. They were not fighting for conquest or glory, they were fighting for their home, for their families, and for their future. The Armada moved into position, cloaked from the Council's prying eyes. Tensions mounted, but not from fear, rather from anticipation. The Terran Empire was about to unleash its full might, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The Council, still seated in their gilded halls, remained blissfully unaware of the storm that was approaching. As Earth's fleet gathered, it became clear that the galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented. The calm, methodical preparations were nearly complete, and soon, humanity's carefully crafted plan would be set in motion. The elite squadron, with their silent precision, would lead the charge, followed by a force so overwhelming that even the Council's greatest defenses would crumble under its weight. The quiet before the storm was nearing its end. The final moments of preparation ticked by, and in those moments, humanity stood on the brink of making its mark on the galaxy forever. The Council believed they held the reins of power, but soon they would come to realize the truth. The Terran Empire, in its calculated silence, had become the unstoppable force they never saw coming. And when the storm broke, it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Without warning, the Terran fleet descended upon the Galactic Council's most vital military installations. Their ships, previously hidden from detection, now cut through the vastness of space with precision and speed that the Council had never anticipated. What began as routine monitoring at the Council's outposts quickly turned into chaos, as alarms blared, and screens lit up with incoming signals that none had expected. Earth had struck, and they had struck hard. The first targets were the Council's military strongholds, carefully chosen for their strategic value. These installations, believed to be impenetrable, had stood for centuries without facing a serious challenge. Now, in mere minutes, entire strongholds vaporized under the might of Earth's new weaponry. Planetary shields, long touted as the ultimate defense, collapsed like glass, unable to withstand the sheer power of humanity's technological advancements. The Terran fleet showed no hesitation, no mercy. Entire planets, once thriving centers of Council power, were reduced to ash and debris, their cities crumbling under the relentless barrage of Earth's forces. Alien fleets scrambled to respond, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Ships that had once patrolled the galaxy as symbols of the Council's dominance were now nothing more than easy targets for Earth's superior weapon systems. The Terran fleet moved with ruthless efficiency, their tactics honed to perfection. Every strike was deliberate, calculated to maximize destruction and destabilize the Council's military infrastructure. Alien commanders, who had grown complacent over years of uncontested control, watched in horror as their fleets were decimated. They had never faced an enemy like this. The Council's initial response was one of disbelief. They had expected humanity to beg, to grovel for mercy, not to unleash an attack of this magnitude. As reports of the destruction poured in, the leadership was left scrambling, stunned by the sheer force of the Terran assault. Meetings were hastily called, emergency protocols activated, but it was too late. The Council had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. Their fleets, spread too thin across the galaxy, couldn't rally fast enough to mount an effective defense. In their panic, the Council attempted counterattacks, sending whatever ships they could muster to engage the Terran fleet. But these efforts were futile. Earth's forces were too well prepared, their weaponry too advanced. The counterattacks were met with brutal efficiency. For every ship the Council launched, Earth's fleet tore through 10 more. It wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter. The Council had always believed in the superiority of their numbers, in the strength of their fleets. But now they were learning that numbers meant nothing in the face of technological and tactical brilliance. The psychological impact on the Council was devastating. For centuries, they had ruled the galaxy, their power unchallenged. Now, within hours, that illusion of invincibility was shattered. The fear spread quickly, infecting the highest ranks of the Council's leadership. They had never imagined that humanity, a species they viewed as little more than a minor nuisance, could wield such destructive power. Every report that came in only deepened their despair. Entire fleets annihilated, planetary defenses obliterated, key worlds lost in a matter of moments. The realization that they were facing an enemy far stronger than they had ever anticipated shook them to their core. As Earth's forces pressed their advantage, the momentum only grew. The elite squadron, composed of humanity's most skilled and experienced soldiers, led the charge deeper into enemy territory. With each successful strike, the Terran fleet pushed further, dismantling the Council's infrastructure piece by piece. The squadron's precision was unmatched. No target was missed, no opportunity wasted. Every world they targeted fell, and with it, the Council's grip on the galaxy loosened. The devastation wrought by Earth's new weapon system was impossible to ignore. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not merely a tool of destruction, it was a force of nature, capable of wiping entire civilizations from existence in a matter of minutes. The Council had always believed their planets were safe, that their defenses would hold. But as one world after another fell, that belief disintegrated. The once proud empire that had lorded over the galaxy for millennia was now on the brink of collapse, its leadership paralyzed by fear and indecision. And still, Earth showed no sign of slowing down. The Terran Empire's forces were relentless, their resolve unbreakable. Each successful strike only fueled their momentum, driving them to push harder, deeper into the heart of the Council's territory. With every system that fell, the Council's chances of survival dwindled. They had been unprepared for the scale of Earth's retaliation, and now they were scrambling to save what little remained of their once great empire. As the Council's outer defenses crumbled, it became clear that their core worlds were next. These were the planets that had always been considered untouchable, the heart of the Council's power. The elite of the Council had never even entertained the thought that these worlds could be in danger. But now, the Terran fleet was closing in, and there was nothing standing in their way. Panic gripped the Council's leadership. They had never faced a situation like this. They had never imagined they could lose. And yet, here they were, watching as their empire was torn apart by a force they had once dismissed as insignificant. Fear spread like wildfire, eroding the Council's ability to respond. Desperation set in as they realized that there was no escape from the coming storm. Humanity's strength was undeniable, and the Council's arrogance had finally caught up to them. In their hubris, they had believed themselves untouchable. They had believed that no species could ever challenge their reign. But they had been wrong. The Terran Empire had unleashed its full might, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The unstoppable momentum of Earth's assault was now aimed squarely at the Council's core. These worlds, once the center of galactic power, would soon face the same fate as the rest. The Terran fleet was coming, and with it, the end of the Galactic Council's reign. There was no stopping humanity now. The Council's arrogance had led them to this moment, and now, they would pay the ultimate price. The core worlds, once the impenetrable heart of the Galactic Council, now lay vulnerable before the relentless advance of the Terran fleet. What had once been symbols of power and dominance, fortified with layers of defenses, shielded by centuries of technological superiority, were falling one by one. Each world had been a testament to the Council's belief in its own invincibility, but none of it mattered now. Earth's forces cut through their defenses as though they were paper, demonstrating a mastery of warfare that the Council had never imagined possible. Panic gripped the leadership. The illusion of safety, one they had believed to be eternal, was shattered beyond repair. They scrambled in desperation, meeting in hastily convened councils, hoping against hope to find a way to halt the onslaught. They had once been untouchable, secure in their arrogance, but now they were terrified, frantically begging for ceasefires and attempting to negotiate peace. Pleas were sent across the stars, calling for a diplomatic solution, but the damage was too great. Earth was not interested in words. Humanity had no reason to stop, not until their enemies were completely crushed. As each core world fell, the Council's structure of power began to unravel. What had once been a unified ruling body was now a fractured collection of leaders, each clinging to their own survival. The Council's members, so accustomed to standing together in moments of crisis, were now divided, paralyzed by fear. They had always believed that the core worlds would stand as their ultimate bastion, the unshakable foundation of their empire. But now, as Earth's forces advanced, they realized too late how fragile their grip on the galaxy had truly become. And then, the inevitable came. The Galactic Council's capital, where centuries of decrees had been issued, where the ultimatum to Earth had first been declared, became the epicenter of their destruction. The Terran fleet descended upon the planet with a force and precision that mirrored the cold resolve of humanity. There was no mercy. The capital, the symbol of everything the Council had built, was wiped from existence in a single, devastating strike. Earth's new weapon system, a tool of unimaginable power, tore through the planet's defenses as though they didn't exist. Shields, which had once been thought invulnerable, collapsed under the sheer force of the attack. The planet's surface, once teeming with life, bustling with political and economic activity, was reduced to nothing more than a smoldering wasteland. The towering structures that had once symbolized the Council's authority crumbled, turned to dust in an instant. This was more than just the destruction of a planet, it was the annihilation of a legacy, the obliteration of an empire that had ruled with arrogance and condescension. The message from Earth was clear: there would be no negotiations, no reprieve. The Council had pushed too far, and now they would face the full consequences of their actions. Amid the devastation, some factions within the Council, sensing the inevitable, began to turn on each other. The veneer of unity that had held the Council together for so long quickly disintegrated. Desperate to survive, these factions sought to save themselves, betraying their former allies. Deals were made in the shadows, secret pacts formed, as leaders sought to secure their own safety at the expense of others. What had once been a powerful collective now became a fractured mess, torn apart from within by fear and self-interest. These betrayals only hastened the Council's downfall. What remained of their military, already overwhelmed by the sheer might of the Terran fleet, became further weakened by internal divisions. Communications broke down, and the chain of command splintered. Some commanders, realizing that their leaders had abandoned them, defected to the Terran side, hoping to find mercy in surrender. Others fought on, driven by pride or desperation, but they knew the battle was already lost. In the end, the last remnants of the Council's military made their final stand. It was a futile effort, a battle fought more for the sake of pride than for any real hope of victory. The ships that had once been the pride of the Council's fleet, now reduced in numbers and morale, faced off against the Terran Empire's unstoppable armada. The battle was swift, and it was brutal. Earth's forces, having refined their strategies and perfected their technologies, tore through the remaining defenders with ease. There was no glory in this final battle, no heroic last stand. The Council's forces were wiped out in mere moments, their once proud fleet now nothing more than debris scattered across the void of space. As the last ship fell, the fate of the Galactic Council was sealed. Their reign had come to an end, not with the defiant roar they had always imagined, but with a whimper, as their arrogance crumbled under the weight of their own failure. The Terran Empire stood victorious. Humanity, once seen as a lesser species, now held dominion over the galaxy. The Galactic Council, with all its power and arrogance, had been brought to its knees by the very species it had sought to control. And as the dust settled, the galaxy itself seemed to shift, the balance of power forever altered. What remained of the Council's leadership was scattered, their dreams of dominance shattered beyond repair. They were no longer rulers, but fugitives, hiding in the far corners of the galaxy, haunted by the knowledge that their empire had fallen because of their hubris. Their arrogance had blinded them to the true threat of humanity, and now they would live with the consequences of that blindness for the rest of their lives. The galaxy, once united under the rule of the Galactic Council, was now free from their grip. But it was not a time of celebration. The devastation wrought by the war left scars across worlds, and the consequences of the Council's arrogance would be felt for generations. Yet, in the midst of this new reality, one truth remained clear: humanity had risen, and they had proven beyond any doubt that they were not to be underestimated. The galaxy had learned a harsh lesson. The consequences of arrogance were swift and absolute. The war was over. The Galactic Council, once the unchallenged rulers of the galaxy, no longer existed. What had taken millennia to build had been brought to ruin in a matter of weeks. Their leadership, those who hadn't perished in the final desperate moments of the conflict, were either in hiding or had been captured by the Terran Empire. The galaxy, once held in an iron grip by a corrupt and complacent elite, now found itself under new stewardship, humanity's. But the Terran Empire had no interest in conquest. Earth had not waged this war to replace one form of tyranny with another. Humanity's leaders understood the cost of oppression, having resisted it themselves for generations. Their role was not to dominate, but to bring balance and justice to a galaxy that had been ruled by fear for too long. In the immediate aftermath of the war, their first priority was to rebuild what had been destroyed, to restore the systems and infrastructures that the Council's corruption had allowed to decay. Across the galaxy, humanity's message was clear: they would not be the next overlords. Their rule was firm but fair, designed to restore order and ensure that the chaos unleashed by the Council's collapse didn't spiral out of control. The Terran Empire implemented new systems of governance, encouraging free trade and fostering alliances with species that had long been marginalized under the Council's regime. Peace, where it had once seemed impossible, now stood as humanity's greatest goal. And yet, there was an underlying understanding across the stars: Earth's hand would be as swift and decisive in enforcing peace as it had been in delivering war. Humanity's ascension was not greeted with universal celebration. There were, of course, those who still feared them, who believed that Earth's rise would only lead to another form of dominance. But for the majority, Earth's rule represented something far greater than a shift in power. It represented hope, a hope that had been absent for centuries under the stagnant, corrupt rule of the Galactic Council. The people of the galaxy, those who had suffered in silence for so long, now had a voice. And in humanity, they found not conquerors, but protectors. In the capital of the newly restructured Galactic Order, the Terran Emperor stood before a gathering of dignitaries from across the galaxy. This was not a moment of triumph, not a time for victory parades. It was a solemn occasion, a time for reflection on what had been lost and what had been gained. The Emperor, known for his calm authority throughout the war, now addressed the galaxy in a speech that would define the next era of their collective history. "We did not seek this war," he began, his voice steady. "But when the ultimatum was given, we understood that we had no choice. The Galactic Council believed that their power would protect them, that their rule was unshakable. They did not understand that peace, real peace, is built on mutual respect, not fear. And when they sought to take from us what was ours, we showed them the cost of that arrogance." The Emperor's gaze swept over the assembly, his words carrying a weight that was impossible to ignore. "But we do not stand here today as conquerors. Humanity's strength does not lie in domination. It lies in resilience, in our unwavering commitment to survival and justice. To those who fear us, we say this: we are not your enemies. We desire peace. But to those who would threaten that peace, let this war serve as a warning. We will not hesitate to defend ourselves, and we will defend this galaxy from any who seek to impose their will upon it. The Emperor's words left no room for misinterpretation. Humanity had proven its strength, and now it stood as the protector of freedom. But the speech was also a message to the galaxy as a whole. Humanity's victory was not just their own, it was a victory for all who had suffered under the Council's rule. The war had been won, but the future would be forged in peace, not in further conflict. And it was up to all species to come together to ensure that peace endured. With the war behind them, humanity looked to the future. The galaxy was forever changed. The old ways, the systems of control and suppression that the Council had relied on, were gone. In their place stood the promise of a new beginning, a galaxy where cooperation and unity could finally take root. But humanity's leaders knew that the future would not be without challenges. The scars of the war were deep, and there would be those who sought to exploit the power vacuum left by the Council's fall. Vigilance was necessary. Earth's military, though now focused on peacekeeping, remained ready to act should any new threats arise. The Terran Empire had learned through experience that peace was fragile, and they were prepared to defend it with the same determination that had won them the war. But their vision was one of hope. They saw a future where the galaxy was no longer divided by fear and oppression, but united by mutual respect and shared goals. As the galaxy began to rebuild, the ripple effects of humanity's rise were felt on every planet, in every system. For many, the fall of the Council marked the end of an era of suffering and subjugation. Worlds that had once been on the brink of collapse now had the opportunity to thrive. Trade routes reopened, alliances were formed, and cultures that had been suppressed by the Council's rule began to flourish once again. The galaxy, once fractured, now stood on the brink of a new era of prosperity. Humanity's ascension was a testament to their resilience and their refusal to accept a future dictated by others. But it was also a reminder of the consequences of arrogance, of the price paid by those who underestimate the will of a species determined to survive. The Galactic Council had believed themselves untouchable, but in the end, they had been their own undoing. They had pushed too far, and humanity had responded with a force that shattered the very foundation of their empire. As the Terran Empire settled into its new role as the protector of the galaxy, there was a sense of closure. The war had been brutal, and its consequences far-reaching, but the future held promise. Humanity had emerged victorious, not just through military might, but through the strength of their ideals, the belief that freedom and justice were worth fighting for.